Welcome to Outside Views. Today we're diving into a topic that perfectly illustrates the long-lasting challenges of Brexit and the complexities of rebuilding relationships with the European Union. The much-anticipated reset of UK-EU relations promised by Keir Starmer's government is fast approaching, kinda. But for many industries, especially chemicals, it's clear that this reset will not be the end of the lingering Brexit blues. It's been nearly 4 years since the Trade and Cooperation Agreement was signed, marking the UK's official departure from the EU. And while the deal avoided the dreaded no-deal Brexit scenario, the reality of life outside the EU single market has been a far cry from what was promised by Leave campaigners. For businesses and industries that rely on seamless trade, such as chemicals, the Brexit dream has turned into a logistical and regulatory nightmare. And today we'll explore how Brexit continues to affect the UK economy, dive into the promises of the reset, and examine why this initiative, as hopeful as they make it sound, is unlikely to solve the deep-rooted problems Brexit has created. To truly understand the scope of these challenges, we need to revisit the history of Brexit and its economic consequences. The 2016 referendum, which resulted in 52% voting to leave the European Union, marked a turning point in modern British history. While slogans like "Take Back Control" and promises of economic freedom dominated the Leave campaign, critics, including myself, have always questioned the feasibility of these claims. And one of the key promises of Brexit was regulatory independence. The idea was simple: free the UK from the EU's rules and allow it to craft its own regulatory frameworks tailored to its needs. In theory, this sounded empowering. In practice, it has been anything but. Take the chemicals industry, for example. Before Brexit, UK companies operated under the EU's so-called REACH regulatory framework. This system ensured that all chemicals were registered, tested for safety, and compliant across all EU member states. It streamlined the process, enabling frictionless trade within the single market. But when the UK left the EU, it also exited the REACH framework. The government promised to create its own UK REACH system, but this has been fraught with delays and with uncertainty. Industry leaders estimate that duplicating data already held by the EU would cost over £2 billion, a staggering sum for an industry already under pressure from rising energy costs and geopolitical instability. And this isn't just about high costs. The lack of clarity on the new regulatory regime has left businesses like, for example, Holy Firm, a small manufacturer in Liverpool, struggling to navigate dual systems. Companies now face the burden of complying with both UK and EU regulations, effectively doubling their workload without any tangible benefits. And according to the Chemical Business Association, 71% of its members report ongoing difficulties importing and exporting products. And this isn't a temporary issue, it's a structural one. Dual regulatory systems create delays, increase costs, and undermine competitiveness. For small and medium-sized businesses, these famous SMEs, these challenges are particularly acute. Many now find themselves holding months' worth of stock to avoid border disruption, tying up cash flow, and increasing warehousing costs. And these are costs that businesses cannot afford to absorb indefinitely, and they are contributing to a broader decline in the sector. UK chemical production is now 25% below pre-pandemic levels, with exports to the EU, a market that accounts for half of the sector's sales, struggling to compete. And these issues aren't confined to chemicals. The food and agriculture sectors, manufacturing, and even creative industries have all reported similar challenges since Brexit. Keir Starmer's proposed reset is an attempt to address these issues, but they will be without reopening the question of EU membership. The Labour government has promised to forge closer ties with the EU, focusing on practical solutions rather than ideological battles. Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey have both highlighted the need to rebuild relations with Brussels to support British key industries. But this reset comes with significant limitations. Starmer has ruled out rejoining the single market or customs union, which would be close to impossible at the moment anyway, leaving the UK outside the EU's economic ecosystem. And this means that even with alignment on regulations, businesses will still face friction at the border. It's a fundamental problem that alignment alone cannot fix. For instance, aligning UK chemical regulations with EU standards might reduce compliance burdens domestically, but it won't restore the seamless market access that existed before Brexit. Businesses will still need to prove compliance at the border, creating delays and added costs. And this is why many in the chemical sector remain skeptical. For example, Steve Elliott, the head of the Chemical Industries Association, has called for urgent action to address these challenges, warning that the sector risks further decline without decisive intervention. The stakes are high. The UK chemical industry exports over £60 billion worth of goods annually, with half of those exports destined for the EU. A continued decline in this sector would have ripple effects across the economy, affecting jobs, investment, and innovation. What's frustrating for many businesses is the lack of a clear vision from the government. After 4 years, companies are still waiting for details on UK REACH and other regulatory frameworks. And the government's consultation on chemicals closed months ago, but no decisions have been announced, neither from the old nor the new one. And this kind of uncertainty makes it difficult for businesses to plan for the future. It also undermines confidence in the UK as a place to invest. Businesses like Hollyfirm are already questioning whether it makes sense to expand in the UK when it's easier to operate in the EU. The idea of a reset sounds good on paper, but without substantial policy changes, it risks being little more than a symbolic gesture. And this brings us to the bigger picture. Brexit was sold as an opportunity for the UK to become a global trading powerhouse. Instead, it has made trade more complicated, increased costs, and weakened relationships with key partners. For industries like chemicals, Brexit has been a mere disaster. And while the reset might offer some relief, it's unlikely to address the root causes of these problems. To truly end the Brexit blues, the UK would need to rebuild its economic ties with the EU in a meaningful way. And that would mean rejoining the single market or customs union, or at least a customs union, options that remain politically toxic but economically sound. And until then, businesses will continue to struggle with the consequences of a decision that was more about ideology than practicality. So thank you for joining me once again today on Outside Views. And if you found this little dive insightful, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the so-called reset will make a difference, or are we simply papering over the cracks left by Brexit? And what do you think it will take to truly rebuild the UK's economic relationships with Europe? If you haven't already, check out my earlier videos on Brexit's impact. They, as I believe, provide valuable context for today's discussion. And I'll see you next time with more stories that matter. Until then, take care, and the next video is right here in the end screen.